Welcome back to the morning show. We're once again joined by Thokoza, who is going to be sharing some spiritual insights with us. And namhlanje, we're talking about slaughtering. Oftentimes, people will have conversations and talk about too much slaughtering. But is there such a thing as too much slaughtering? Because sometimes we'll be cautioned against doing that, as some people believe that it will bring death in the family. But here to tell us more is Thokoza. Thokoza, welcome back. Thank you for your time. Too much slaughtering or overdoing it or an overkill. Is there such a thing when it comes to slaughtering?
There's no such thing as slaughtering too much. There is such a thing as slaughtering incorrectly, right? But there's no such thing as ukuhlaba kakhulu, okay? But there's, I would say, not necessarily incorrectly, but you can slaughter. The slaughtering or umsebenzi can be redundant.
How so?
In the sense that if awukwazi ukuhlabela into eyodwa, right, 1,000,001 times.
So are you saying angikwazi ukuhlaba ngalo December ngithi ngiyabonga ngiyacela nangunyaka ozayo ngithi ngiyabonga ngiyacela? How
Ubonga is different.
Okay.
If you are slaughtering with the intention of ukulungisa, okay, you can't say, okay, fine, ngizohlaba ngoba ngilungisa u1 or 2. But then your actions don't change and you do the very same mistake, and then ufuna ukuhlaba ngoba ulungisa u1 or 2. That's when ukuhlaba becomes redundant. Or kwesinye isikhathi, you know the problem resides in the fact that when you don't want to make up with your mother. But uhlezi uhlaba ucela izinto, uhlezi uhlaba ucela izinto. When you know that that's not the root cause for your ill health, the problem is that you don't want to go and do the hard work, which is make up with your mother. So uhlaba can be redundant if the problem is not related to slaughtering. Because there are a category of problems that no ritual, no herb, no healer, no prophet, no mtandazi can resolve, but they have great spiritual significance. Hence, therapy is very, very, very spiritually significant, and resolving relationships in families, because those have a great spiritual impact in billions.
Yeah, and you were talking about mhlambe ukuhlaba wrong, right? And the too much slaughtering. Let's go to those instances where people will say, in this instance, akufanelanga ngabe uyahlaba. Let's say, for instance, there's somebody who's in the family who's ill, and or somebody who's in hospital, and then you'll be told, this is not the time for you to hlabe, because then you're bringing about death in the family, or you're inviting death in the family. I know people that would be Christians, but they would also practice the African spirituality aspects of things, and they'll tell you during that 40 days and 40 nights of ukzila, you are not supposed to slaughter during that time. Talk to us about that.
So the idea that umuntu with slaughtering can invite death into the family is problematic.
How so?
In the sense that yabona umuntu mayigula ekhaya, kwesinye isikhathi into emgulisayo ukuze alaphe requires ukuhlaba. Right? Now, umuntu mayigula, don't avoid the slaughtering, but you need to trace the root spiritual cause of ukugula kwakhe. You'll find that lo muntu uyagula because he's the cause of the problem that needs ukuhlaba. Then niyahlaba, umuntu passes away because now you've slaughtered idlozi, sees the problem as resolved. Lo muntu did not apologize or did not correct it. They chose to be part of the problem and not the solution. And then people say ukuhlaba causes death. Ukuhlaba does not cause death. Umuntu angagula for 6 years. Kusho ukuthi ngeke ngihlabe for 6 years. You know? Another thing, if umuntu passes away after ukuhlaba, it's not always a bad thing.
So how would you then interpret that, or how should we interpret that as a family?
Okay, if umuntu passes away after ukuhlaba, okay, kwesinye isikhathi uyabakhulula. Yabo, ukhona umuntu, yabona kwesinye isikhathi ogogo nomkhulu and abanye abantu bayagula in such a way, and they're strong, but they don't want to tell you ukuthi yazini kahle kahle sengifuna ukuhamba manje. It's too painful. But they hang on to life because they know which they'll break your heart if they pass away. Right? Then nina nikhetha ukuhlaba, and then idlozi is like, okay, fine, sesiyakhulula manje, come join us this side. And then you see it as a bad thing. Just because that family member didn't communicate that they were in pain, they didn't communicate that this chronic sickness, this in and out of hospital is too painful for me, I would prefer ukuthi ngihambe, right? they didn't want you to go through the process of ucela edlozini, which is it's African euthanasia, where ucela idlozi ukuthi bamthathe. Yabo, you didn't want you to go through that painful process. Yabo, so but they played strong. So kwesinye isikhathi, especially when it comes to people who are very old and sickly, we become selfish in their death. We want you to stay because of me, when in actual fact, sometimes it's better for them ukuthi badlule nje kahle. Akusho ukuthi manje ngoba usuhlabile and someone has passed away.
Yeah.
The red flag is if uyahlaba and someone onganacala onganalutho who is healthy passes away by violent or traumatic death, then the two are linked. And then you should be worried. You need to be looking at, how did you slaughter it? Did you burn in bed when you were not burning in bed? Where did you slaughter the animal? And finally, bekhuluma banemsamo. And on top of that, isibongo. Right package, wrong address causes many a death in the family.
So Uma Uti, how did you slaughter? Which could be a wrong way of slaughtering that could eventually lead to someone's death?
Okay, it depends on the wound, right?
Okay.
Emdenini, okay? If emdenini ukhona owathatha lenxeba lele wayoganga nalo, then nina you decide to go back to the old ways zokuhlaba lezi zikwaZulu ngokuyifaka ngomkhonto la, right? Ngoba ukhona waganga ngayo lelo nxeba many years ago in your family history, okay? Someone might die. But it is not the act of slaughtering that caused that person's death. It's because instead of ukuhlabela inkomo bekufanele ukuthi nihlabela. Yabo?
But how would you know then, say, if you don't know ukuthi khona umuntu owaganga ngenxeba?
Hey, sometimes ufunda ngokushona kwamuntu, unfortunately. Kwesinye isikhathi kubhlungu nasekwi-medicine abantu bafunda kanjalo odokotela. But other times you can learn from nithi niyayizama ukuyihlaba la inkomo doesn't die. Nithi niyayihlaba la inkomo maybe yes iyafa but inyama goes off very quickly. Or when it shouldn't go off. Yeah? It's not always where it's going to be death that we learn from. Kunezinye izinto, ezinye impawu that we can look at to say, no, mhlambe le nxeba leli ilona lenkinga, so we need to change ukuthi siyanquma whether siyakwaza, yabo. But the one thing I would not do is shoot an animal.
Yes.
You should never shoot an animal,
absolutely.
and ideally we shouldn't be eating meat that has been shot.
Yeah.
And at some slaughterhouses they do shoot animals. Hence you see kwesinye isikhathi idlozi, when you eat meat from the shops you get sick, but when you eat meat from umcimbi you are fine. It's because leyo nyama mhlambe that you're eating from that particular shop or that particular restaurant yadutshola. And remember umuntu oshone ngengozi siyamgeza.
Yes.
Yabo.
Yeah.
Same with isilwane.
Okay, sure, it does sound like there's a lot of spiritual awareness that we need in our families. But as usual, Lucia Mkiza is here for us as the TMS family to give us insights on some of the things that we really are curious about and the things that we have a lot of questions around. Once again, we thank Lucia Mkiza for joining us here on The Morning Show.